a big hello and welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Megan and I'll be your moderator for today's session. And our session today is quick wins for revolutionizing the recruitment process. So we've got a great session ahead, but before we get started, I just wanted to check off a couple of housekeeping items. Could you please make sure that you're muted throughout this session? And if you have any questions, you can enter them into the chat, and Raveen and Chelsea they'll try to address them as they go, but that can sometimes be a little distracting. So they will likely save them to the end. We're gonna have a Q&A session. So please submit your questions whenever you think of them. And any questions that we might not get to, I'll follow up by email with an answer afterwards. We will be sending out a recording of the session, so don't worry if you need to drop or if you missed something. We'll send it to you so you can watch the full session at a later date. All right, so without further ado, we can get started. I'd like to first introduce Chelsea Overbey from REVGEN. So she is our special guest today. Thank you so much for joining us, Chelsea. And we also have Raveen Shah, who is the CEO of HelloHire. So he is going to kick things off.
All right. Thank you, Megan. And thank you, Chelsea, for being here. Really, really excited to have you. So for everyone else, thank you again for being here. Feel free to drop, your location in the chat. Love to hear where everyone's coming in from. If you're in a networking mood, drop your LinkedIn profile. We'd love to hear where everyone's from. So again, thank you, Megan. I'm Raveen. I'm the CEO and founder of HelloHire. We are on a mission to really make the recruiting process more efficient, more fun for everyone while keeping it human. Again, HelloHire is a virtual interview and screening platform that really automates a lot of the manual, tedious, repetitive parts of recruitment so that we can do what we love, which is really meeting people. And turn it over to Chelsea. Love to hear a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Overbey. I'm the Director of Human Resources and Recruiting for a company called REVGEN out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Megan, thank you for hosting, and Raveen, thank you for asking me to be here. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to share your wisdom with us.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about REVGEN.
Yeah. So at REVGEN, I've been here almost coming up on 6 years. We've been in business since 2014. We do outsource sales for other software companies. So we're specifically within the software space. So we bring individuals in and we put them in a kind of on a sales campaign. So they're getting sales experience. And then on the back end, we actually act as a staffing firm. So we are a staffing firm, like this says here, and also an outsourced sales agency. So yeah, we build teams, train people, and grow revenue.
Yeah, I loved when we first met. I remember you gave us the spiel, and you're like, "Well, we're a staffing agency, but not really a staffing agency." And so, but you do go through a lot of candidates, a lot of trying to find the right people, and place eventually after your training program, placing them with companies, right?
Exactly. Yep. So we're hiring anywhere from 15 to at our highest, I want to say like 25 per month, and each of those individuals is going through our sales training program. And then once they finish up, usually around 4 to 6 months, is when we'll start introducing them to our staffing partners, and we'll help them get placed.
Amazing. Yeah, we need to talk about that. Get some sales talent here at HelloHire, but that's a conversation for later. Chelsea, I probably don't need to tell you and everyone else here, but recruiting really today is harder than it's ever been. Tell me kind of about some of the challenges that you are firsthand experiencing or have been, at least over the last 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say like over the last year, I want to say the norm for employees is to always be open to work. So you could have a job that you're pretty comfortable in, you don't hate it, like you're pretty happy, but they're always open to looking. So what that means is you could potentially have a spot open up on your team that you need to fill at any moment in time. And then also what that means is the candidates that you're talking to are maybe interested in your role. They're actively applying, but there's a 50% chance that they're actually interested in REVGEN or your organization. They might just be like kind of getting their resume out there, and it's not a super serious look. So yeah, it is extremely challenging. And I'd say I've seen more of that over the last like 6 to 12 months than I've ever seen in recruiting.
Totally. And what you see is everyone's hiring, right? If it's a weird place where there's, we're in a looming recession, but still there's not enough people are out there looking for, for work. And it's just everyone seems to be hiring.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, one of the things that I've heard is that, oh, well, we're in a, the pandemic caused this labor shortage. And because of that, we're just, there's not enough talent in the market, and eventually it's going to go back. And I think by now everyone's come to terms with what has happened and the fact that it's not going back. But really, this isn't a problem that was created by the pandemic. It just really exacerbated it, right? So if you look at the graph, like every year for the last 10 years, the number of people voluntarily leaving the workforce has been going up. And in 2020, when things were so unpredictable, everyone like just held on to their jobs. And, that's why when things went back to the linear trend in 21, it felt like it was because of COVID. But, this is a growing problem. And what we're in right now is our new normal. Like this is the climate that we're going to be hiring in and recruiting in for the next few years easily. And because of that, one of the biggest problems that we're finding, and you alluded to this, Chelsea, but you get a lot of volume of applicants, but kind of the quantity of quality applicants has stayed the same. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so to give you a little bit of insight into some of our numbers here at REVGEN, so 2 years ago, we would bring in about 200 applications per month just through referrals, LinkedIn, Indeed, college recruiting, and we were able to hire about 20 of those, which was like right at our hiring targets. Like it was okay. Now we see closer to like 450 to 500 applicants per month. And I'd say realistically, like 10 to 15 of those are what we would consider like hireable, and we would actually want them on the team. And then they actually also want us as well. So that's a lot of resumes to sift through for not a whole lot of outcome. So we definitely saw this.
Totally. And when I think about it on the other end, it's like candidates in this market are just like, they know that the chances of them getting a reply is next to zero. And so they're just going to apply, 20, 30, 50 at a time. And so, that burden just falls on recruiters because, are these people really interested? Are they qualified? It's really impossible to know, and also impossible to go through 400, 500 resumes, one at a time. So that is definitely one of the big things that we're seeing consistently. The other thing we're seeing, which is a product of our new normal, is ghosting. Tell us about that. Like, how has that been affecting you over the last, again, 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I'd say over the last year and a half, this increased dramatically. We have a recruiting calendar that I frequently look at. And if an interview no-shows or like cancels right before without really any reason, we change the color of the interview on the calendar. And I looked at the calendar at one point, and it was almost like 50% of our interviews that we had scheduled just no-showed. So at that point, I was like internally freaking out, and I was like, we're doing something wrong, like something is wrong. And I reached out to some of my like recruiting friends in the business, and I was like, are you guys seeing this? And they were like, oh my God, absolutely. Like, it's a huge waste of time. So it was wildly frustrating. So we needed a solution, and we needed to figure out a way to like find candidates, or like figure out which candidates were actually interested. Because I think that's where the ghosting kind of came in, is like people not really like actively job searching or wanting to leave their job, or they just like weren't that interested in REVGEN, and that's okay. But still, like we would rather have that calendar space back for somebody that is interested.
Totally. Yeah. And then, that just compounds, right? If your calendar is filled with people not interested, then the really interested people end up booking, or you get in touch with them later, and then they may have taken a job somewhere else. And so it's a vicious cycle that just pushes the calendar out. And I think one of the other companies we work with had, I think, a 10 to 14 day window between when they could actually slot people into an interview. And that's impossible to hire in today's market with that sort of time frame. And on the topic of hiring targets, this is the other challenge. Well, all the things we've just talked about, I mean, they definitely, suck and make life very difficult for those on the ground. But talk to us about, targets. What happens if you don't meet those targets and you get bogged down by the process?
Yeah. Our hiring targets, at one point, it just felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders because I'm managing both our internal recruiting, so bringing people on to actually work for us on our payroll. And then I have clients as well that are, demanding candidates. So if I'm missing hiring targets, I not only have my CEO's eyes on me, like, hey, why are we not hitting these? I've got clients that are upset and they're unable to hit their targets. So yeah, missing hiring targets was not an option for me.
And I think for many of us, right? Like, again, it's a weird market, and it doesn't mean that there's any less pressure on us. It's like, well, here's a bunch of stuff that sucks and making our life much harder.
Yeah.
But, we still need to meet our targets. So I empathize there. When we think about how we've hired over the last few decades, it hasn't really evolved, right? And since job boards came out into the world and became the norm for how to get people their interest, that we've been working on that same process, right? Application comes in, let's try to find a way to screen people out. And so really it's the process that hasn't evolved, which is where, there's room for improvement. Talk to us about that a little bit. Like, what has been your process, and what are some of the challenges with the process?
Yeah, I get a lot of visibility into this, not only because I am internally recruiting people, but I also am setting people up for interviews at other organizations. And I think that the tolerance from the candidate has changed. As an organization, there cannot be a situation where, a candidate applies for a job and you contact them 5 to 7 business days later. Somebody else is going to go and swoop in, and they're going to have a tighter process, and they're going to get that candidate, especially if they're good. I see very, very little tolerance for 6-7 rounds of interviews spread out over a month and a half to 2 month time frame. It's just too long. And then something else that I've seen is making candidates do some huge projects, or help us build out a business plan and have it submitted by your interview. There's just no tolerance for that. The interview process, it just can be concise. That's what we saw.
Totally. And it's funny, you mentioned those things. I would even say really any friction at the front end, right? Anything that is in between someone putting their hand up and saying, I'm interested in this position, and you actually having a conversation with them is perceived as work, right? Candidates in today's market know that there's so much opportunity in so many different, with so many agencies and employers that they're going to take the path of least resistance. I saw one agency paying Indeed per application, and then funneling them to a 25 question mandatory application form. You had to fill out 25 mandatory fields, and it boggles my mind. I mean, there's no way that someone who's sought after and has options is going to continue. I went hit submit and I saw 25 things turn red. I was like, oh man, who's doing that?
Yeah, it's exhausting. I mean, it's tiring, and job searching is stressful already. So having to go through these multiple steps, and it's just not super necessary.
Totally. And I feel like this is something that everyone's been talking about for a while, right? Candidate experience and candidate friction. But anything I've seen in terms of tech innovation, it's still putting a barrier in between the applicant and the recruiter, because we've been programmed to kind of protect our time and think, oh, well, I will only meet the person who is, really worth my time. But it's harder to know who that person is. And in fact, almost impossible to guess, because you don't know who's interested, and you really don't know who's qualified, especially for jobs where personality and fit are more important than hard skills and experience. If you're looking for communication, commitment, you know, traits like that, that you've got to meet someone to know that if that's there.
Yeah.
So, you know, everyone must be like, oh, well, you know, thanks for telling us what we already know and the pain we're already feeling. What do we do about that? What are these quick wins, right? How do you make this, what do you do differently, right? And the crazy idea is literally invite every single person that's interested in your job to an interview. Offer to talk to them. And this is the part that everyone is always, you know, concerned with, because it's like, well, I don't want to protect my time. What if I'm going to spend, you know, hours talking to, you know, unsuitable candidates or candidates that aren't a good fit? And, you know, that's where technology can play a part. But, you know, what we're doing, and you even mentioned this, Chelsea, is we have built-in ways to screen people out. And in doing that, we're literally sending top applicants away. We're like, you know, come work for us, but nah, you know, we don't really want to talk to you until you do all this, you know, legwork. Anything else on that you've seen or you know, felt?
No, I think you got it.
So, and that kind of brings us to like, well, you know, how do you do this efficiently? How do you do this in a way that's human, that's a great candidate experience? And that's really, you know, what Hello Hire is, right? So we've built this virtual screening and interview platform that automates some of the tough parts of recruitment, like pre-screening, like scheduling, like reminders and communication, and all the things we do over and over again, to really do one thing, which is bring top applicants to a recruiter as quickly as possible so that you can be first. You can be the first one to have that conversation, to sell the opportunity and win that talent, right? And so that's what we do and how we've been able to work with REVGEN. And I think that's a good segue at Chelsea into telling us more about like how is this in practice worked, and what has it done for REVGEN?
Yeah, and I honestly think that this 50% is lowballing. So I had pretty much a girl on my team, and her whole entire job was, as resumes were coming in, we're doing a resume screen, and then we start doing outreach to candidates. So it was a phone call, voicemail, text, follow up with an email. If we hadn't heard from them, the next day we would shoot them another text. At that point, if we hadn't heard back from them, we were like, okay, fine. But I mean, again, it was like a whole position set aside just for reaching out to candidates. We had to do this because we have 450 candidates coming through each month. So that was just a lot of time spent just doing initial outreach. So that was our process. Somebody applies to REVGEN, we do the resume screen, we contact them to do the phone screen. And then the phone screen was typically like 15 to 20 minutes each. And then we'd save like 5 minutes after for logging notes. And then if we liked them, we would move forward and schedule an actual in-person interview with them. And that was pretty much our whole process. We would do reference checks and things like that after, but that was pretty much it. And then to give you a little bit of insight into what our like recruiting process looks like after using Hello Hire. Perfect. So now, as soon as a candidate applies to REVGEN, we do some level of screening. We do have a couple of states that we just can't really hire in. So we do some level of screening as soon as somebody applies, but nothing too extensive. We don't spend a whole lot of time on that. But somebody applies to REVGEN, they're immediately sent the Hello Hire link. They click the link and they're able to schedule a time to meet with us. And then once they meet with us, it's an hour-long block, and it's blocked off on our calendar and on their calendar. But realistically, we're only talking to them for 6 or 7 minutes. They get, during that time, they're watching a video that we had a videographer come in, and it's pretty much like me pitching REVGEN down on the sales floor, so that we're not having to constantly say that every single time we get into a meeting with a candidate. So we're already selling them on REVGEN with no effort other than making that one video that one time. So they watch the video, they meet with us, and from there we either schedule an interview or we don't, and we pass on them. So it goes straight from that Hello Hire meeting directly to the final interview, and then offer or no offer.
Right. And this is another, I'm glad you mentioned it, right? Because we actually have the ability to set that interview time. And a lot of people, when they come into Hello Hire the first time, their mind can't fathom anything less than a 15-minute screening interview. And, like you mentioned, the video up front, the whole process, the waiting, the back-to-back nature of our smart scheduler, it makes it possible to do 5, 7, 10-minute interviews where you're just really honing in on the candidate and what their skills and experience are, and answering their questions, really, because that's what it's about, right? The relationship, the human touch. But yeah, it would be impossible to imagine that you can do that, but you are, and it works. You mentioned kind of that video. We've got a slide here that kind of talks. Maybe you can talk through what that candidate experience is, and on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is a good representation of what this looks like from the candidate side. So once somebody applies to REVGEN, they're sent the link, they click on the link, they schedule their time, and then this is where this kind of comes in. So at their scheduled interview time, they'll hit continue. They're immediately watching that. I want to say it's like a 3 or 4 minute video of us like talking about what REVGEN is and the role and compensation and all of that. And then they're kind of waiting in a queue. And then once the interview like finishes up before them, they're then set in a face-to-face video with someone on our team. And then from there, the web interview actually happens. It's just a quick, I think ours is set for 6 minutes. I think you can schedule it all the way up to like 10 minutes. But essentially what this used to look like on our calendar before we used Hello Hire, like on the hour, we would have, 5 or 6 different schedules or different phone screens scheduled throughout the day. Now we're able to have 1 hour block where we're able to knock out 6 candidates at a time. So wildly opened up our schedules.
Totally. To spend time on high value work, right? It's, there's still so much work to do in a recruiter's day, and having sort of all of the, we call it like low value work, which is, phone calls, emails, text messages, chasing, scheduling, rescheduling, canceling, all of that stuff just goes away, and you're able to really hone in on what's important, which is actually meeting people and making that easy and pleasant for obviously the candidate and also the recruiter. So really, when we think about quick wins, right, for everyone here, and really, what are those quick wins that you can think about and do right now? Chelsea, what would you be, those quick things? Like, what would you tell recruiters here and agencies and hiring teams? Like, what are those quick wins to really think about and consider?
Yeah, so I'd say quick wins from utilizing Hello Hire, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the quick wins that we saw, I'd say like from a candidate experience perspective, it changed everything about our candidate experience. It's really easy to get in touch with us and get this scheduled. They're also like, they're seeing that like consistency of like what, we want to sell them on. So like the consistency and the way that REVGEN is communicated to each one of our candidates is the same because they're seeing that video. I'd say a huge quick win for us is not only that we like cut the time in half that we spent reaching out to candidates. I mean, that's huge. But additionally, the ghosting situation that we talked about earlier, I'd say we probably cut that in more than half. Like, if somebody is showing up for this Hello Hire meeting, they're dressed, they've got their video set up, they're really likely to actually show up to the scheduled interview as well. So I'd say that was a big win that we haven't even really talked about that much.
Awesome. And really, I think it's opening your heart, mind, and door to more people up front, and not screening them out, I think is, whether you use Hello Hire or not, just opening your door and, stop the things that are screening people out and pushing them away is really, I think, another added benefit here that you talked about.
Yeah.
So, Megan, do you want to kind of take over?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a little bit of time here for question and answer. I have a question here about how does it actually work? What does the flow look like for candidates?
Great question. So I think the flow that Chelsea kind of described, it's like you send them a branded scheduling link. So it's branded for your organization. They'll see the blocks of time that your team has made available to do these interviews. They pick the time. They then got to answer some questions that help them self-select out. So you kind of talk about the requirements of the job, which nobody reads anyways, right? When they're applying 100 jobs at a time, they're not reading every job to see the detailed requirements. So you kind of play it back to them and say, look, this is a sales job. You're going to be on the phone all day long, or, it's a commission plus base. Like, these are things that you would want them to know ahead of time. And so if they meet that criteria, or they agree that that's what they're okay with, then they get automatically scheduled for an interview. They get it in their calendar, they get reminders. And then, when it's time to interview, they just click on the link, which would launch the screen that we showed previously. I forgot to mention for everyone that's here today, we are offering a free month of Hello Hire to thank you for being here. No strings attached, absolutely free. I know it sounds wild and crazy about, change is always wild and crazy, but, we're willing to put, our money where our mouth is. Let's go for a free trial, use it in an unlimited capacity for 30 days and, look at the data for yourself. It will be, you will be surprised. And we'll drop a link in the chat where you can claim that free month. But I forgot to mention that special thank you to everyone here is 100% free Hello Hire for 30 days for you to really experience the benefits.
Also, for what it's worth, this is super, super easy to implement. This isn't something that you need to download and integrate with your, whatever candidate tracking system you're using. It really shouldn't come in and disrupt your current flow by any means. It truly will come in and make it easier.
That's a really good point.
Great. We have a question here from Santiago. Is there a way to make a tech challenge on the platform?
Good question. So if you're thinking about recruiting, software engineers or highly skilled individuals where, the main criteria is, skills and experience, I'm not sure if Hello Hire is the best platform, because in those scenarios, you're really hunting for the right person. And in that scenario, you're going to really accommodate them and build a relationship, right? Whereas, Hello Hire is a game changer for hiring in volume, or where you're looking for personality and fit first. But to answer your question, we have seen companies use Hello Hire as the first sort of vibe check, quick 5, 7, 10-minute conversation. And if that works out, then they're asking the candidate to do a next step. So that next step could be a assessment. It could be a test. It could be a background screening, a reference check, criminal check. Like it really, and that's configurable. And we've got automation that kicks off the next step. So if you yes a candidate, it will instantly tell them what the next step is. And it could be a tech challenge, like you've mentioned. So we're able to integrate those next steps into our process, but we don't really build that challenge into the platform. Now, you could do it in the interview as well as an option, but it's not really built in. Hope that answers your question, Santiago.
Awesome. And I have a question here about what is involved for recruiters? How hard is it to set up?
I'll let Chelsea speak to that. I'm biased, but yeah, Chelsea, how hard is it to set up? Or maybe you could walk through the setup.
Yeah. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, for sure. Let me.
I'll try. I don't know if this is gonna work, but let's try.
Okay. All right. Let me give access. Okay, you should be good now.
All right, so Andy is a recruiter on my team, and he's the one that's mainly using Hello Hire. So I asked him to record this. So We use Breezy as our applicant tracking system. So in looking here, like this is Andy, fake Andy. Andy applied to REVGEN, and this is all it takes for us to get started with the candidate. So we go email. We already have a template created for Hello Hire. And that's it. So they're pretty much sent that. And then I'll play the rest of this video. So he goes in and then we click, and this is if we were the candidate at this point. I love that this is REVGEN branded. It looks like we like created this internally. So they go in, they get to schedule their time. Just a small intake form, name, phone number, email. And then they're given a list of times to choose from. And then these are predetermined questions that our team put together. These used to be sent through like Breezy through our applicant tracking system, but it's much easier to just send it through Hello Hire. And these are completely customizable. And that's pretty much it. The rest is just him kind of scheduling it. But from there, they get sent a calendar invite, and then it's on our calendar and it's on theirs. Hopefully that was helpful.
Perfect. Thanks for showing the video.
Yeah.
All right. Next question I have is about pricing. How much does it cost?
Yeah. So we're essentially the cost is $99 or $100 per recruiter per month. And so, you know, for $100, we're typically seeing double to triple productivity on the recruiter side. But yeah, it's very simple, transparent, easy pricing. Yeah. And free for 1 month for everyone here.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't see any more questions coming in. Take a sec. If anyone else has any last minute questions, just pop them in the chat. But thank you so much, Chelsea and Raveen, and everybody. Thanks for joining and thanks for your questions. Yeah, as Raveen mentioned, this exclusive offer is just for our webinar guests. So we're opening up the platform for free to use for the month of August. The link is on, we don't have the slide up, but I'm going to put it in the chat one more time. And then I'm also going to include it I'm going to send out a follow-up with the recording and the link to the free trial. So thank you so much, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
guys.